How Biafran Ogbunigwe shell nearly killed me during Civil War IBB. Kindly share this video, subscribe, like and comment below. Ibrahim Babangida 758 times 505-1. Former military President Ibrahim Babangida, IBB, has recounted a Civil War experience that nearly took his life after Command 82 Battalion came under heavy bombardment from Biafran forces on March 27, 1969. Babangida said he was nearly killed by the Biafran Ogbunigwe, also called Ojukwu Ogbunigwe. The Ogbunigwe was a series of weapons systems locally mass-produced by the Biafrans. These weapons include command detonation mines, improvised explosive devices, and rocket-propelled missiles. In his autobiography, A Journey in Service, the former military president recounted that it was during that fierce fighting that a Biafran Ogbunigwe shell wounded him. Babangida said, "Now, the attention of federal troops shifted to Umuahia. After the first attempt to take Umuahia by the 3rd Marine Commando failed, Colonel Shuwa gave that task to Lt. Danjuma, who commenced the invasion of Umuahia just days before March 27, 1969. That attack would go on until April 24, 1969. As a major, I was commander of the 82 Battalion, one of the 7 battalions deployed by Lt. Danjuma to invade and capture Umuahia. But to get to Umuahia, we had to first go through Uzuakli, a mere 13 kilometers away. On March 27, we came under heavy bombardment from Biafran forces. But somehow, we held our ground and bulldozed our way to the outskirts of Uzuakli. Then, under my command, on April 1, the 82nd Battalion attacked and captured Uzuakli. But as it turned out, our victory came with severe costs. Now acutely aware that from our position in Uzuakli, we were only a few kilometers away from Umuahia, the Biafran artillery began an uninterrupted bombardment of our positions. Not even our aggressive response to these attacks deterred them. It was during that fierce fighting that a Biafran Ogbunigwe shell wounded me. The shrapnel landed on the left side of my chest and came close, we would later find out, to affecting my lung. I was fortunate. Read also, IBB under fire over new position on June 12. He continued, initially, I wasn't aware that I had taken a hit. Partly because of the intense and prolonged firefight, I never heard a shot or felt the impact. I smelled some burning human flesh. In those brief seconds, the wound didn't hurt. Then suddenly, as I grabbed my chest and felt blood oozing out, I felt like a kick in the trunk had left me with a numb, throbbing pain. And then, my feet started to gradually go numb, first above the knee, then below it. At that point, I think I fell and had to be moved, and one of the other commanders, Maman Vatsa, took over the command of my battalion. My casualty evacuation process was slower than my colleagues would have wanted. It was getting past dusk, and since the available makeshift runway lacked takeoff and landing gears, an improvised runway had to be created from a convoy of military vehicles with their full lights on. Once that was done, I was promptly evacuated to the Lagos University Teaching Hospital, Idi Araba, Lagos. Surprisingly, despite the throbbing pain, I remained alert and conscious from the moment I took the hit through the period of my evacuation. Even though I wasn't sure of the nature of my injury, my spirit was upbeat. While I didn't think I was about to die, I knew this would be a life-changing experience. Share this video, like and subscribe, for more of our videos coming up.
A Journey in Service, that's the title of the autobiography. By the way, this gathering was a gathering of who is who, in terms of leaders, past, present president was present. Were present there. Governors, an array of governors, political leaders from outside of Nigeria, and they all, if we're given the opportunity, had something to say and wanted to say something, but only if you could. And we heard some of the, I think, history-making speeches, if I dare say so, and some of the things that will define Nigeria's history going forward at yesterday's book launch. Professor Kila, let me start with you.
Well, I think, so there are two things there. Number one is the book itself, the story of IBB. The story of IBB is the story of Nigeria, with all its complexity, paradox, absurdities, and ingenuity as well. Then yesterday, the declaration of protagonists of that story, i.e. present and past leaders. Let me take it from the story of Babangida himself. You know, so IBB, I say IBB is another way of saying Nigeria, because in one body, in one man, you have everything that is Nigerian. Entrepreneurship, ingenuity, creativity, a high level of corruption, a high level of manipulation and personalization of what not to be personalized. But there's also achievement in a lot of ways, because it is important to note that Mr. Privatization and Free Enterprise in Nigeria is actually IBB. For those of us who believe in all that, he's also Mr. Infrastructure. In a way, I've always thought that IBB, in terms of his date with history, is a man who won the lottery and lost his ticket. Because he could have been bigger than every other thing if only he had managed that June 12. Not because he was a saint before June 12, but because he had a lot more on the scale. I want us to imagine a scale on left and right. He had a lot of chance. The former vice president, in a very Cambridge way, I dare say, made that analysis saying, here comes somebody who was tormented to celebrate his tormentor. That's another Nigerian story. The way we deal with memory and history is amazing. And I mean amazing in the sense of something that is outside the extraordinary. In many parts of the world, and I think of countries that have gone through fascism, Nazism, these kind of people will never sit together again. That is the way, you know. In many parts of the world, you would have people who are pro-democracy, who are against democracy. I'll give an example. After Italy became a republic, after fascism, they made a law saying all those who are involved with fascism should not have a place in a democratic system. And there was no gathering, and if you were seen with them, it was something very bad. So Nigeria beats that. I'm also very fascinated by the reflection of the past leaders that spoke. It is interesting to notice that every one of them, without exception, accepted the greatness of IBB in a way, you know, starting from President Goodluck Jonathan to all the ones that spoke. So, and I think, you know, this is the kind of thing that lets you realize how complex the story of Nigeria is. And there is a warning to people who are passionate about politics. We need to learn to find a way to do this politics without killing ourselves, without insulting ourselves, and without becoming enemies. Because the real protagonists, at some point or the other, tend to sit together. How do we manage passion and decorum is the question, is the bigger question that, you know, I carry on as we sing. I think the trick is to focus on what matters. The trick.
All right, okay. Professor Kila, I mean, yes. Thank you so much. I know that we have excerpts or a clip from the man himself when he was speaking. I think we should play that very quickly just to buttress the points you've made.
Yeah. This book, which chronicles my experiences, decisions and challenges during our national service, tries to answer some of these questions from my modest perspective. My colleagues in arms and I presided over significant change and turbulent reform. We confronted monumental challenges in the economy, the polity, foreign affairs and defense, and security spheres of our national life. We surmounted obstacles, sought change from old ways, encountered unusual obstacles, and devised innovative solutions, we all thought to leave Nigeria a better place than we found it, often at a great personal sacrifice and in the face of significant challenges. I'm deeply aware of the inconveniences and sacrifices the public endured during this period, and I acknowledge and appreciate their resilience and commitment to progress. Although the reform caused inconveniences to our people, we built lasting national institutions, some of which are still in place today. Undoubtedly, credible, free and fair elections were held on June 12, 1993. However, the tragic irony of history remains that the administration that devised a near-perfect electoral system and conducted those near-perfect elections could not complete the process. That accident of history is most regrettable. The nation is entitled to expect my impression of regret. As the leader of the military administration, I accept full responsibility for all decisions taken under my watch. And June 12 happened under my watch. Mistakes, oversights, and missteps happened in quick succession. But I say in my book, in all matters we acted in the supreme national interest so that Nigeria could survive. Our nation's march to democracy was interrupted, a fact that I deeply regret, but Nigeria survived and democracy is still alive.
Maradona, the evil genius, a number of names that he can describe or has been used to describe him over the years. But you heard from him directly, and I hope you can watch the fuller speech because there are a number of things that he says, salient points there. But Professor Killer, you were just rounding off your thoughts.
Yeah, that's rounding up. And this speech, as you anticipated, buttresses that point more than anything, that he encapsulates all these things. He takes responsibility for this, which shows that, allow me to say some of us were right. He was wrong there, when we're trying to point out that this is not the way. Today, sorry. Viewers should notice that everybody was there except President Buhari, the former president. Everybody was there. I don't know if he didn't get the memo, but he was busy doing other things. But he was one person that wasn't there, and it would have been interesting to
he
see.
Sent a representative, though.
He sent a representative. Others did it. I think it's a statement. He's not been there. He's just been Buhari, good or bad.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so Rufai was right there where the action was happening, and that's why he was in Abuja yesterday, one of the reasons. So you can give us a clear picture, behind the scenes, what happened, what people didn't see, perhaps, if you're willing to, and then, of course, very importantly, some of the speeches that we heard yesterday, your take on those stories to dissect them.
So I was not just only there. I'd read the book a couple of times before it came out. I was also reread it again yesterday because I knew this was going to come up. A great day for Babangida. It was his day in the sun. I'm not sure any event in recent times have had this array of leaders and also past African presidents. You had Enesbai Koroma there of Sierra Leone, and you also have Nana Akufo-Addo, who gave the keynote yesterday. The creme de la creme, the hall was packed out. A lot of people couldn't even get it. It was so packed out. Everybody wanted to be there, wanted to have a glimpse of this man. Going back to the speech he's made, he accepted responsibility, but a lot of people are going to take that in different ways. So what would people like Ambassador Musbao, that always calls on my regular radio show, that lost his sight in June 12, say? What would people like Owela Kemfa, that was on television this morning, said over 100 people were killed alone in Lagos, that he know that they went to count the bodies? What will happen to those ones? Awoyenko. So even when we talk about the legacy of June 12, the lives that were lost, the crime that was committed, also there will be many questions that will linger. That why was it because Abiola won the election? If Tofa had won the election,
would it have been?
will they have annulled that election? Because the fear then, and the zeitgeist then, was the fact that, oh, Abiola, very popular and everything, a lot of the military Apache did fear that if he got in there, he knew them in and out. So they felt they were going to lose out. And Abiola had to constantly reiterate. So the annulment, was it an Abiola thing, or because they, what's it called, they just wanted to annul? But all of us now know it was an Abiola thing. Also, the brave move, if you read the book, of publishing the election results.
Yeah.
Because they actually published the election result out there. And Professor Henry Woso had passed recently, and these were the conversations he had. Another part in this conversation is the part of how the annulment was announced. In the book, he says it was Abacha's forces. He didn't know anything about it, but he took responsibility because he was commander-in-chief.
Yes.
A lot of people will say the buck stops with you.
Absolutely.
You take responsibility, yes, but what about other things that happened around that time? Because he well said it. He lost a lot of his friends. A lot of names were called. The Maradona name came from the fact that they had shifted the transition date many times forward and all of that. So there's been a lot of breakback. Unlike former Vice President Oshibajo did say yesterday, his story also encapsulates the story of Nigeria. If you read the beginning, how did he even get into the army? A Yoruba man that dedicated his life to education, something, or something, I forget his name now, was the one that at a tender age went to the north, started teaching, got fascinated about how he can grow the north. One of his students was Yakubu Gowon. And it was Yakubu Gowon that he brought to Babangida School, Bida Provincial, on the day they had career day. And they saw this fine gentleman officer. And most of them said, we would like to join the military. Look at the commonality. A Yoruba man impacting education in the north. In fact, that man is said to have taught most of the creme de la creme. He was Yakubu Gowon's teacher. He was Babangida's teacher. He was Abdul Salami's teacher. At least he taught nothing less than many presidents out of the north. So that's also Nigeria. And also, you know, the back and forth of him and Audu, like he likes to call him, Abdul Salami Abubakar, that I'm 6 months older than you. Abdul Salami has finally accepted that he's 6 months older than him. The nicknames, Kukule, you know, that they will call him and all of that, where he made, you know, his decision to get married after I saw Yakubu Gowon's TV. Again, another Yakubu Gowon getting married because he had just sustained some injury in the war, and guess who he had to get married to? You know, Maria. Yeah. And going forward, also other things he did. Also the twist that the tormentors are now seated together.
Yeah.
And that was Bola Tinubu. In fact, when President Bola Tinubu was giving his speech yesterday, he did say that he was one of the only people that did speak when Babangida was not ready to inaugurate the Senate.
Yes.
And he had very hard words for him. He thought he was going to jail, but Babangida shook hands with him. And we all know the story how Bola Tinubu had to go on exile and all of that. It's easier said now, but I'm sure it wasn't easy for Bola Tinubu then, when he had to scamper and run for his life. Other things said about him, and this was where the business angle came, and you said it rightly, Professor Killer. He opened up the country for entrepreneurship. We will not be on air today if not for Babangida opening up the space in 1993, making it possible for electronic media to be able to gain licensing and all of that. Before then, it was mostly government owned. The banking sector you have in today, all the great reforms, it will not have been possible without Babangida. Many reforms in many sectors will not have been possible. Like you say, the desire of free market enterprise. All of that is there. But the big cardinal question that will always haunt him will be June 12th. And let's not deceive ourselves. And you put it aptly, Professor Killer, when you said this was the time he won the lottery, but he had lost his ticket. Because if he had handled it better. But there he also said these things were not in his hands. This book will never rest the debate on June 12th. In fact, after this book, many other books will still be written to counter some of the things he said there and say their own part of the story. But the most important thing is that he has told his own part of the story. You might like it, you might not like it. He's told his own part of the story. And for those that are saying, no, he doesn't right to tell his own part of the story. No, he has a right to tell his own part of the story. And with due respect, I will now make a clarion call to the Jack himself, General Yakubu Gowon. Sir, you are 90 already. you owe us your own part of the story as regards the civil war and other things that happened under your reign. Because you see, our leaders must be able to tell their own side of the story so we can add it to historical discourse. It might not be palatable, it might not be good. We will still tell the truth, like we cannot account for people that died during that period and these needless deaths and how a man's money was taken away. But we need to hear these stories.
Thanks for tuning in to Smart Okason TV show. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share to keep the intellect flowing.